lot of times people center their life on the relationship and they let everything else fall by the wayside. So if the relationship falters, like you feel like your whole life is ending, and if the relationship ends, you feel like you've got nothing left. So if you're dating from that place where you feel like you just need someone to fill up your empty life again, generally that's where people run into problems.
Hi, welcome back to the Turning 30 podcast, the place to be if you're currently looking for aligned, healthy partnership in your 30s. I'm your host, life coach Emma Wilson, and I'm also here to help you feel better, be more confident, and get unstuck when it comes to finding love. I am so excited because this week we finally have not only a guest episode, but the guest that I have invited on is a man. So I say that in that tone of voice with shock because, as you probably already know, most of the guests that I have the privilege of inviting onto the Turning podcast are women. And to be honest, I would love to speak to more men, but I actually find it more difficult to find the right men to speak to. And when this specific guest reached out to me, I was really excited because I always love getting the male perspective. And we're talking about one of my favorite topics, which is breakups. And this talk is so good. It's relevant for you, whether you are currently in the thick of going through a breakup, whether you're still recovering from your last breakup, whether you're now in a relationship and you're not 100% sure if you're about to break up, or if you just want to learn more about dating after failed relationships. There's a lot of good stuff in this episode. I'm going to intro the guests in a moment, but before I do, I just wanted to let you know that there are still a few days left to get inside the Next Chapter in Love group. So this is my signature coaching group program that has been specifically and very strategically designed for women who are in their 30s, who are single, looking for their next relationship, who feel blocked when it comes to love. It's for those of you that feel like you're doing all of the right things, but love still isn't coming, and you really want to understand how you can fully put yourself in a position where you're ready to call love in. So it's going deeper than the other work that you may have probably done before. I know a lot of the women inside have already done therapy, courses, reading, coaches, all of the things, but they've not done this. And all of the clients who I have worked with, who have found relationships, have said to me they needed to go to this depth with themselves in order to peel back layers of things that were blocking them. I call them the protective armors. I know many of you who listen to this were in my Open to Love free masterclass that I ran a couple of weeks ago, and you will have already heard me talk about this, but it's the concept that the accumulation of the experiences in our lives from societal conditioning, our role and identity, our childhood wounds, and our past relationship baggage has created beliefs and stories and narratives that now affect how we show up in dating. And the Next Chapter in Love group is we're going to come together in order to really do this work so that we can unblock our hearts, we can open our minds, so that when love does come our way, we are fully ready to receive it. I'm super excited because this is the most intimate container that I have done for a while. It's the most high touch. We're going to be meeting every week, and it's going to be 12 weeks long. And we start on the week of March the 21st. But March 23rd, but actually the final dates and times will be sent out once I see the group of women who are inside, so we can decide the best time for everybody, and all of the time zones will be rotated. So you will get at least one live session every other week, and it's going to be very intimate. So there's only 15 spots available, and there are some spots left. We're going to be diving really deep. So this is for you if you are listening to these podcast episodes, you are really thinking to yourself, 2026 is the year that I want to meet somebody. This is the year, by New Year's Eve, I would like to already be in a relationship and already planning my future with somebody. If that is you, then go to the link in the podcast notes and already grab your spot before it's too late, before all the spots get taken. So let me introduce you to this week's guest. Cole Zesiger is a breakup and relationship coach. He specializes in breakup recovery, dating advice, and also some relationship coaching. Cole went through a divorce at the age of 23 and then immediately after another big breakup. And when he went through this, he began sharing his journey on social media, where he grew his following to over 750,000 followers across Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. He's coached 2,000 people plus through heartbreak and helped them either rekindle their relationship in a healthy way or move on with peace. And to some of the topics that we go into, which is actually something that I don't usually talk about or don't usually condone, getting back with your ex, but it was really interesting for me to talk to Cole because he told me in the episode that he does work with a lot of people who they break up temporarily and then they want to get their ex back, or their ex wants to get them back, and how he can work through that in a healthy way. So that was really interesting take for me. And as I was saying, he got divorced by himself. So he speaks a lot about what he did after he went through a breakup, giving really practical advice that you can already put into action. So we speak a lot about things like going no contact. And it's a really good episode with some topics that I don't think I've ever actually spoken about on the podcast before, which is always the sign of a good guest episode. Cole has just brought out a brand new book called Exes and No's, the breakup advice you don't want to hear. So definitely check that out. We speak about it in the episode. And yes, I'm really excited to welcome Cole onto the podcast. Hi, Cole, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Wow, we just had a brief chat before we even started, and I'm already very excited to dive in. And as I was saying, it's such a treat to have a man on the podcast because I currently think we've had about 4 or 5 men in 6 years of podcast guest interviews. So it's really fun to have that. And what I want to start by talking about is something that I have found as a coach who works sometimes with women who are going through a breakup, but it's not my only niche. It's such a difficult niche. It's such a difficult group of people to work with because of how heightened our emotions are around breakups. And I'm saying that not difficult as in it's a bad thing, but difficult as in to support people in this way. It takes, it's a time in your life where you feel like everything is broken and everything is off. And I have such a huge amount of respect for coaches who, do this work. I think it's actually incredible, the work that you do.
Thank you.
Why do you think that breakups are so life-shifting or so challenging? What about the anatomy of a breakup is so hard?
So for me, I start with my story a lot when I try to relate to people, just because that's kind of what got me started in it. So for me, when I got divorced and then I got broken up with right after that because I jumped into a relationship too soon. It was about I got on a dating app about 3 days after the separation to try to fix it. That was my path to fixing it, I thought. And then about a month after that, I had a girlfriend. So it was really quick. And she broke up with me too. And that kind of led me on this journey. But the big thing for me was that I wasn't just losing someone that I was in love with, a couple people that I was in love with. I lost my entire vision of what the future was going to be. And that's what makes it hard for a lot of people. Like I was going to go to medical school. We were married. We had a dog. We were going to have kids. And then all of a sudden, all that just disappears. And for me, I was at that time like 23 and back living with my parents, and my entire future just kind of crumbled all in 1 second. So that's why, like, when people start working with me, their general mindset is, I need to get this person back immediately. Like that is what I need to do, because they have this past that they understood and it had direction in it and they were excited about it and they loved it. There were probably problems. Like a lot of people even think about breaking up themselves and then they get left, and then all of a sudden all they want is their partner back. But usually it's because when they look forward into that future, it's nothing but black emptiness. They have no idea what it's going to be. So something, even if it was difficult and you had arguments and had love, is always going to be better than that blackness of the future. So that's generally the mindset people start with when they come to me.
Yeah, I think that point of when you go through a breakup, it's not just grieving the past and what has been, it's grieving the future that you had built and that you thought was going to happen. And that's what is so difficult.
100%. Yeah. And that's why people get stuck.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think that it's a pattern that people get in when they go through a breakup and immediately jump into a next relationship. And the follow-up question to that is that always a bad thing, or does sometimes that just happen and people just meet the right person straight after?
So yes, it's a pattern. It's a common way. There's a couple reasons it's a pattern. One, it kind of works, at least short term. That's why people do rebounds. Like it does take away the pain. I remember when I got in mine, I have like funny journal entries where I talk about how I did not miss my wife anymore. I did not feel sad at all. And I even wrote at the bottom of one of them that when I'd look at pictures of her, my stomach would feel sick and I didn't understand why, because I just had all this pain that was bottled up and covered by another person that I never grieved. But the problem is it does work for that first little bit, and you trick yourself and you convince yourself that you're actually healed. But almost always what I've seen is that pain does come out. And sometimes people can work through it together and the relationship can actually work. But most times it reveals that the foundation of that new relationship was mainly to cover up the pain. So once that pain starts coming out, and once that other person is a person now and not just this mystical thing that makes you forget about your pain, people start to recognize, whoa, maybe we're not actually that compatible. Maybe we don't have the same values going forward. As for, is it always a bad thing? I try to stay away from always, pretty much always in breakups. Like that's a big thing about what I try to do to differentiate myself online is there's usually like two camps for breakup stuff. If you've watched it, if you're watching this and you're going through a breakup and your Instagram has discovered that, you're probably seeing all this, but the two camps are generally always get back with everybody. Every ex comes back, say this magic word and they'll come back to you. If you buy my course, like it's going to be guaranteed. And then the other camp is never get back with anyone. Every ex is evil. An ex is an ex for a reason. Like they're all broken. They're all red flags. And like that's generally where the internet tends to sit. And part of it's because of algorithms, like extreme views just get pushed. But I find that with people, I'd say that if you get broken up with, most breakups they should happen. Like most people break up for good reasons, but the truth is that a lot of people can get back together and be happy, and a lot of people can move on and be happy. So yeah, if whether it's rebounds or anything like that, I try to listen to people's stories first and see, because people are different. But yes, generally what happens is people are trying to cover up pain, and it ends up leaking out later.
Yeah, what you said is so true. Obviously, context is everything. It's when it comes to anything to do with love, especially relationships. There's no black or white answers that we can say. So I 100% agree with you on that. I think a pattern that I see a lot, and I know we spoke a little bit before about the fact that you have a split audience, around 50-50 men and women,
Yeah.
whereas I'm obviously working mostly with women, so I don't often get to hear the male point of view as much. I think the pattern that I see is that men are the ones who jump quite quickly into new relationships, whereas women tend to go through more of a healing process and require that alone time. Do you also see that? Is that something that comes up for you as well?
Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
true. I have kind of a biased view because everyone who comes to me is trying to get better. And that is interesting and should give a lot of women listening hope. Is I have several men clients who are avoidantly attached, anxiously attached, and they're trying to get better. So what you see on social media that says that men always jump into other ones and they realize later, yeah, I do think the data suggests that it's more common for men to do that than for women. Like women, I'll talk about that in a second. But
Yeah.
but there are a lot of examples of great men out there that do really want to get better and are really putting in the effort. Now, on the data for men jumping into relationships quicker, the reasoning I've seen behind that is just that as a society, women are more conditioned to speak to each other and to support each other through things and to talk about things more deeply. Men, usually what we're conditioned to do is to tell our friends, get back out there. She sucks. Like it's going to be so much better if you just go out and date again. So that's what a lot of men tend to do. They just listen to what the culture is. So, and that's what I did. Like you jump into
Yeah.
another relationship, and generally like that relationship feels really good, and then your feelings come up and you have to process them later. And for me, that led to having to grieve two relationships at once. They kind of like coalesced into one major heartbreak. Whereas women generally are there for each other. They talk about their feelings with each other. they're more open, they're allowed to be more open. And because of that, I do think they move on quicker generally.
Yeah, I think that what you just said is really important about acknowledging that you are working with men who are really committed and dedicated to being better, that are paying, to
Yeah.
have a coach to go through a process. Because what I really see now, and I'm sure you see it as well, and like we said, the extremes that are in the algorithm and a lot of the content that is very popular, and also is a limiting belief of a lot of women, is that all men are a certain way, and we kind of
Yeah.
tar men with the same brush of, well, men do this and men don't do this, and it's something that I really, really try to work on with all of my clients. Is, there are good men out there, and if you do not have that belief, then you're not going to attract the good
Or
men.
see them.
And I think that's, yeah, exactly, because your brain is focused on all the bad things, and you probably have lots of limiting beliefs about, I'd say the things that I hear and see the most is about men not being as emotionally intelligent or able to
Yeah.
be, communicative, and about commitment and things like this. And I always try to steer my clients onto this path of seeing, of course, there are good men. So whenever I have men on the podcast, I always love to hear this and hear insights into the fact that you are working with both men and women clients who are all doing this work. And yeah, I think it's just a really important point. And I also want to say that I have also have friends, clients who are women who did exactly that pattern that happened to you in your personal breakup journey, where they got into another relationship. Maybe it wasn't 3 days after swiping on the arts, but it was soon after. And when they were in that relationship, it was a buffer for them not to feel all the pain. And then,
Yeah.
obviously the breakup that came later, which inevitably most of the time happens. Yeah. And that was like a soul crushing event, because you're just grieving everything all in one go. I would love to hear what happened for you after that part of your journey. Like, is there a second
Yeah.
part? I presume that there's a second and a
There
third
is.
part to
It's
your
a
to your
happier
story.
part.
So yeah, let's dive in.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, so I got divorced. I was 23. And then I kind of just refused to feel it, and I jumped into another relationship. And it did work. Like, we dated for about 10 months, but as soon as we started talking about the future, that's when it showed up. It
Mm.
We started talking about what marriage would look like and what the future would look like. And as soon as that conversation came, I just kind of shut down and just got really anxious that I would make the wrong decision. So I started being hyper vigilant for anything that could be wrong. I started finding flaws. I started seeing other couples and comparing. And I think I was too anxiously attached. I felt like I loved her too. So I didn't want to ever leave, but I was in a place where I felt like I was just frozen. Like, I couldn't stay because I was so afraid of making the wrong choice. And also I couldn't leave. So I just kind of got really weird. I got really distant,
Mm.
and eventually she broke up with me because of that at about month 10. So at that point, I did what a lot of people do. I wasn't into short form content as much, which is funny because that's mainly what I make now. But I was really into YouTube. So I dove really deep into all of the YouTube how to get your ex back guys, because I just thought, like, that is the only solution to my pain here. I thought that if I don't get her back, then my life is over. I have no idea what I'm going to do. And an important piece of why that happened was because after the divorce, I didn't rebuild anything. Like, I moved back with my parents and then got a girlfriend. So I didn't
Yeah.
make any new friends. She just became the center of my world. So when she left, my whole world ended. So
Wow.
I was watching those guys and all day long, because it just felt like really comforting to feel like I had some sort of plan of saving this. But one of them said that I should make myself her best option. So it wasn't the purest motivation at the beginning. Like, I started doing things to make myself better, pretty much solely so she would think I'm more attractive. But over time, it ended up naturally shifting that I started really liking myself and liking my life. So I moved. I started going to the gym like 6 days a week. I started just purposefully putting myself out of my comfort zone. I went to like 2 or 3 parties a week to make new friends, and made a goal that I had to make at least 2 friends at every single one. And then I just started saying yes to all these trips people were going on. So I went on 11 trips in like a 6 month period. It was
Oh
just like
wow.
every couple of weeks I was somewhere. And yeah, and I didn't really have that much money. I had to get really creative with that. And yeah, so I ended up getting to the point where I found out that she had another boyfriend, and it was about 5 months into this like big growth journey. I was also in therapy, and I was reading every book I could find about relationship health because I didn't want to feel like I messed something up again. And basically, I saw that she had another boyfriend, and I sat there and I thought about it, and I didn't feel sad, which was really
Mm.
surprising to me because it was my entire reason for doing anything. But I've realized now as I've looked back that all of that work that I put in made me really like who I was and really like my life. So during that time, I started making lots of videos. I made TikToks pretty much solely at first until the US government was going to ban TikTok. Then I moved over to YouTube and Instagram too as like insurance. But I was just TikTok, and I made them 3 every single day, sharing what I was learning. And the coolest thing that happened was my wife, who I'm married to now, we have a daughter. She watched the videos because she got divorced too. So she was watching them for like 4-ish months until she DM'd me on Instagram. And that's how we met and started dating and got married eventually.
Oh, I love that. That's such a great story of how you met.
Yeah, so that's the best thing. But yeah, that was kind of how I accidentally stumbled onto this. I just I was really sad. I was trying to get her back, and I really didn't want to repeat things again. I felt like I'd made mistakes that caused my divorce and also caused my breakup, which I've looked back now and I've realized it wasn't all my fault. I felt like it was at the time.
Mm.
So that was my main motivation to get started.
Yeah, I love that second part of your story. And you now have a book that's coming out
Yep.
called Exes and No's.
Yeah.
That's the right way I said it, right? Good. Yeah, for everyone watching video, Cole is holding it up. Firstly, congratulations. Super
Thank you.
exciting to publish your first book. And I know that it's a breakup book. So could you share a little bit about what it's about and also the breakup advice that most people don't want to hear? I'd love to dive into that topic.
Yeah. So it's written to be like in order what to do to go from someone who's just gotten broken up with or going through a divorce, and you feel like you're completely drowning and have no idea what you're doing, and getting that person all the way to a place where they love their life and either get back together in a healthy way that actually lasts or move on, and how to begin dating again after heartbreak. Because that can be confusing too, especially if you build up walls or find it hard to trust people again after getting rejected or betrayed. That's how the book more ends. But usually the advice that people don't want to hear is the first part, which is that if you want to get better, you have to treat it like it's an addiction and you have to detox from the person that you love. So, what that looks like, they've actually done studies. This is one of my favorite things I've learned in this journey. They've done studies on the brains of people who go through romantic rejection. So it could be breakups, getting rejected by a crush, even divorce. Obviously, it's more intense as you go up in the intensity of the rejection. But they've done brain scans and found that those people have essentially the same thing going on in their heads as people who are withdrawing from hard drugs like heroin and cocaine. And I think that's really, really cool because it explains why people do everything they do. Like after a breakup, you can feel extremely like lack of motivation. You can feel like nothing matters. But they've actually found that the people who are going through those are highly, highly motivated, but only for one thing. And if they're not doing that thing, if they're not getting that thing, then they go through withdrawal symptoms like drugs.
Mm.
So like kind of like people who have an opioid addiction will rob stores, like rob pharmacies. People going through a breakup, they need the fix of their connection with their ex, so they will do crazy things. They will drive hours and hours to see them. They'll buy plane tickets to go across the country and see them. They'll surprise them at work. They'll drop off 1,000 roses on their porch. Like I've seen all these things happen, and
Mm.
it's because they're highly, highly motivated to do that thing. So the first part, the part that people don't want to hear usually is, if you want to get better, you do have to treat it like an addiction and you have to start detoxing from them.
Yeah.
And one thing that can actually help too is that like the people who get back together and actually change these cycles of like either it's on and off or you just keep fighting and you can't figure out a path forward. Often when people go no contact and they stop texting their ex, like, and they both improve their lives, those are the people who get back together too. So if you need to rely on that at the beginning, I think that's okay. But yeah,
Mm.
the very beginning, like if you feel like you're totally drowning, it's usually You need to set a boundary to not talk to them anymore. You need to put everything that they've given you in a box somewhere. You need to mute them on social media so that you're not seeing all of their stuff. And usually that takes about like 4 to 6 weeks to start working. You're going to feel extremely bad at the beginning. You're going to feel worse, just like when people withdraw from drugs. But once you get to the other side, it starts to be a lot easier.
Yeah, I wanted to dive into this topic of no contact because I know it's something that you share a lot about. And to be honest, I'm exactly the same in all of my advice for breakups. I'm a hard no contact person. And I think that a lot of pushback I often receive is that what you said of, but maybe we want to, get back together in the future and we're just going on a little break now and we're just taking some time apart, but we can still keep in touch. And I think at the bottom of everything is this hope that you maybe would get back together. And by keeping that, the window open, even just slightly, that it will result in the potential, basically. There's always that bit of hope, a shred of hope there. What do you say when your clients push back on that and say, no, Cole, I just, we're going to be friends and we need to be in touch? Is there any good advice for anyone listening who feels
every
that
single
way?
client?
Yes,
that is extremely, extremely, extremely common. So if you feel that way, you're listening, you feel that way, you are not crazy. You are exactly normal. Everybody does that. Even if some of your friends think you're crazy, or if you're beating yourself up in your head and you're saying, I'm so weak that I still want this. But you practice loving this person and being loyal to them for a long time. So of course you still feel that way after they make a decision that you don't want. Of course you do. So like I said before, there's extremely high motivation to do one thing. So I've wrestled with this question for a long time, what to do with hope. Because especially at the beginning, before I had really solid ideas, I got a following pretty quick. In 6 months, I had about 100,000 followers. So I was like, people are listening. I need to figure out am I leading them astray or am I doing good things? I would really, really think about that. So hope was one of the first things I really came to a more unique idea on. And I like to decide on hope, and then I'll lead it into the friends thing and what to do there. But I view hope as good or bad depending on the fruits of the hope. So I like to go one step deeper before I just label it good or bad. I say, what is the hope bringing into your life? And for some people like me, at the very beginning, I would not get out of bed or eat. I wouldn't do anything. I weighed 140. I was a really skinny guy and I lost 20 pounds from not eating. So I was
wow.
Skeleton person, 120 pounds and 6'1". So with that, I needed the hope of that video telling me that if I became her best option to get out of bed, that was required for me to begin. So for some people, when they hope, they're like, okay, I can't go no contact. It's going to ruin everything. It actually is the best way to get back together too. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of people get back together. I've coached hundreds and hundreds of people to get back together. And that's what they do. They separate, they don't talk, they improve their lives independently. They figure out what went wrong. And then they decide that they liked life better together. That's how people get back together. And they talk about it and make it happen. They don't get back together by one person decides they don't want you around and you just try to force yourself into the gaps of their life. So if you're really, really hoping for it and that hope actually drives you forward to do good things, I think it's okay in the beginning. Do the good things. And generally those things shift towards, as you care for yourself, you start to love yourself more. And generally what I see is people start really anxious. And then once the anxiety kind of goes away because they build the rest of their lives and they become comfortable, all of a sudden they feel really angry. And then they work through the anger and the pendulum kind of goes to the middle and they're more clear. On the other hand, if the hope is just getting you to stalk their Instagram and look for signs and stalk their Spotify and Venmo and whatever you can find, and it's not getting you to do anything productive, I would definitely kill all of it because it's not helpful. So that's the first thing, is if somebody comes to me and they're like, okay, I need to keep talking. Maybe we can be friends. Maybe we can start like this. I first look for what hope would do and then try to direct them in that way. Now, just for chances of getting back together by being friends, that is counter to human nature to try to do that. And the example I usually give is like, if I've got a guitar right here, if I were to say, I'm going to sell you this guitar and you can either have it for free or for $700, which one are you going to do? There's like, which one would you do?
For
Do you
free.
think you'd pay me for it?
No, I'll just take it for free.
Yeah, good. That's smart. That's the right answer. And that's basically what people are asking. Like when they're saying, "Let me just be friends," they're saying, "Let me give them everything that I wanted to give them in the relationship,
Mm,
but not require anything, not require
yeah.
a commitment, not require sacrifice, not require any change in their behavior. Really, I'm going to tolerate worse behavior because I'm going to watch them date other people now. And also, they're not going to talk to me as much." And usually they go even a step beyond that and they act better than they did in their relationship. So it's like, I give you the guitar for free and I give you $100. And I say,
Yeah.
thank you so much for taking my stuff. And people, that just doesn't make sense for people to start paying you to get the thing that they're getting for free. So generally that's what happens is people accept friendship. They push and push and push. And what it does is it lowers the perceived value that the ex has for the person. It makes them respect you less and makes you less attractive to them than if you know what you're worth and require that.
Mm.
So that's generally what I say to them.
Yeah, I think it's a very good analogy. I'm actually quite surprised to hear that you see so many couples getting back together. Because
Yeah.
in my mind, what I see isn't that. It's more, people break up and go on their independent ways and then meet new people eventually down the line after a period of being single. For some, obviously, like we were saying, that period can be shorter or longer. Can you
Yep.
talk a little bit about the getting back together thing? Because I agree with you what you were mentioned before about how my algorithm is definitely, maybe it's my brain algorithm, not just my Instagram algorithm, but it's definitely more attuned to do not get back together. Once
Yeah.
you've broken up, that's it, the story is finished. So I'd love to hear your
Yeah.
take about the getting back together thing.
Yeah. So more realistic numbers so people hear because it's like a lot of if you do watch breakup stuff, they'll cite certain studies that are like there's one study at a college. It was with university students. I can't remember which college it was, but it said like 65% of people get back together who break up. I don't see that as being true. And I think it would be bad if it was true because like breaking up and then finding someone else and learning is a beautiful thing. Like the fact that we can hurt each other and then go apart and have someone else come and show us so much love and then grow and have deeper character as a result of that. And we can just all be in this giant system of people doing that to each other until we all have like we all become better people. That's really, really cool. If we just got stuck on one level of a video game and just played it over and over and over again, like that's not what I'm talking about here. But the 3 out of 10 people that do get back together, usually what happens is they break up for a reason that can be resolved. So there's some that usually can't. Again, I don't like always, but like if you break up for a difference in deeply held values, like religion's a big one, or desire to have children's a big one, or sometimes like if one person wants to be a van life person and one person wants to live in New York City, like big life director things, people will break up for that. And usually if they break up, like you should not change your entire life goals. There will be people that you will love just as much that will share those. So that's one. Another one would be like huge things like abuse or cheating is a hard one. If people break up for that, again, none of these are always because people can change from crazy things, but those are generally if people break up for those reasons, they don't get back together. The people who do, a lot of times it's like a timing logistics thing. Like one goes away to school and then they lose the good level of communication they had, or maybe they just have a conflict that they couldn't figure out and then they have to grow, or maybe they have attachment style differences and they don't understand them and then they learn about them. There's a lot of things that can be resolved. So what tends to happen with those people, like I'll share one story so it's more real. There was and this is probably one of my favorite people I've ever worked with. So there was this one guy, he came into, I was doing like a big Discord group as part of the coaching at that point. So there was about 4,000 people in it and it was really active and fun. Like a lot of people made like their best friends in the world on it because they were all just going through really hard things together and would talk, and it was fun. But one guy, he came in and his wife was leaving him. They'd been married for 10 years and they had 2 kids, and like she was leaving and she left. She actually started dating someone else. And at first he was just trying to pander to her and like beg and do anything he could. And what we did was we got him to refocus on his life, say that he disagrees with it. He'd rather be a family, but that he was going to make his life good regardless. So he started a business. He went no contact. He started hanging out with his kids more. He made better relationships with them. And then one day his wife and him were talking and she just like started crying and said that she didn't want to do this anymore and that she missed their family and like really like asked for forgiveness. And that's one important thing is when somebody does that, like you actually do want to provide some friction. You want to know like what changes you want to see, and then you want to take things slowly so they can prove it to you that things have changed. But she did. Like she changed. She wanted to be part of their family. There were a lot of things he was doing that was creating resentment on her end that he apologized for too, and they worked through together. And yeah, they got back together, and then they actually flew to my wedding. So I met both of them, and they're from a different part of the US. And yeah, it's been almost 3 years since then, and they're like a strong family, and they're amazing. So like when you hear stories like that and you think about that, that's why I don't like the advice to never get back ever. I think it's outside of reality. Like there are several people that do, and it's beautiful. It's just so dangerous when you see a lot of people that are off and on and never let go of someone, that I think as a culture we've taken the rhetoric a little too far, and in order to protect against that worst case scenario we just say never try.
Yeah, and I think it just goes back to the theme of the conversation, which is there's always context, there's always nuance, there's always, so many different parts of the stories that we have to understand and listen to before saying these sweeping statements of never do this, always do this. So that's a really nice story. Let's talk about dating after breakups, because I know that this is a very heated topic and something that a lot of my audience want to know about. And I know that we don't do sweeping statements and always or nevers, but I would love to hear your thoughts on how to know when it's the right time to get back out there and to start dating again once you've gone through a breakup.
I am biased on this one because I do feel like I did this one wrong. So my first favorite, like my foundation that I go to for this a lot, and I included this in the book too, was a lot of your audience probably watches Matthew Hussey for dating. He's like the guy, especially for like women's dating advice. But he said something I love. So I try to use this too, which is you can date again after a breakup when you're happy enough with your life. And I like that a lot because without the enough, that's the general advice. Like be happy with yourself, love yourself, and then you can start dating. But that's really vague and that doesn't mean anything. And you don't know when you've actually arrived there because we're always kind of working on that relationship with ourselves. So happy enough means that you are happy enough in your life that you're not going to do the same thing again. And also that you're going to be choosy in a way, that you're not going to go for this first person who shows interest in you, that you're happy enough that you know what you're looking for and you're secure enough in where you are in being single that you're willing to wait for that and to look for that. So an analogy I like for this one is if you get laid off from your job, but you have savings, then you're going to be a lot more powerful. You're going to be able to look for a job that you actually like. If you have no savings and you're just like, I need money to eat, I'm not going to be able to pay rent this month, you'll take anything, regardless of your skills, regardless of your work experience. So it's the same thing. A lot of times with people who get broken up with, and especially the ones who are more anxiously attached or it affects them a lot, it's because their life tends to look like this. So if you're just listening, I've got my book and I've got one finger under it, that a lot of times people center their life on the relationship and they let everything else fall by the wayside. So, and that's what I did after that second one. So if the relationship falters, like you feel like your whole life is ending, and if the relationship ends, you feel like you've got nothing left. So if you're dating from that place where you feel like you just need someone to fill up your empty life again, generally that's where people run into problems. That's where they either like the pendulum swings really far and they were with someone who's extremely avoidant. They find some guy who has no self-confidence and is extremely anxious, and they try that out and then they don't like that either. So they break up again. or they find someone who's exactly the same, that they had someone that didn't treat them well and they didn't prove to themselves that they deserve to be treated well. They don't believe it, so they find the same thing again. So I generally have people work through building the other areas of their life before they date, that they look at their family relationships, their friend relationships, some sort of belief that's bigger than themselves. So it can be like spirituality or religion, hobbies, work, and health. And like with my clients, we work through each of those categories and get them as close as we can to 10 out of 10 in like satisfaction. And then once they're there and they feel like they really love their life, generally more healthy relationships just kind of show up for them because that's what they believe they deserve. So that's the general thing I like to look at is, are you happy enough with your life that you're not just going to jump into anything?
Yeah, I love that. And I think when it comes to the post-breakup world, isn't being healed and fully ready, I think that can be a bit of a fallacy, like a bit of a misconception that you have to be
Undefinable.
exactly, like you have to be fully healed or you have to be over your ex. For those watching
Yeah.
video, I'm doing quotation marks, because and then you basically, I see the pattern, and then you just don't date at all because you think that there has to be this really long period of time where you go on this big healing journey. Of course,
Yeah.
go on the healing journey, do the work, watch the YouTube videos, do the courses, read the books, all of the things. But after a certain amount of time, a lot of the healing actually takes place in the dating journey or in the next relationship that you will be in. So I like to also add that to the story of how to know when you're ready to go back dating, is not to wait for too long to think that you have to be in a certain place with
Yeah.
yourself before you go back out there.
And also, I think this might be something with social media too. I don't totally know because I kind of was in the dating world as social media has been around. I'm 28, so I was like in high schoolish when social media got bigger. So I've kind of been around the whole time social media was around. But one of the big things that I see is after breakups, like especially more women, like if men's thing is shutting down and getting into another relationship quick, women's thing tends to be like making a lot of rules for what they're going to look for now. And I think they get all the rules off of social media. But I have a client that I've worked with in the past that she couldn't find anyone to date. And I was like, why? Like let's look through your process of what's going on. Cause she'd been divorced, like things were really hard. So she really didn't want to get hurt again. So she made all these rules, but they were very, very strict. So she had like, if someone asked her on a date immediately after the first dating app message, gone. If they didn't message her after 7 days, gone. If they took more than 3 messages to message her about a date, gone. If they didn't ask her to pick up or meet there, gone. So it was like just all of these tripwires that, like, yeah, they are cool. Like they sound good. And especially if you see them on a social media video, it's going to sound like you're really powerful. You're weeding out the weak guys. But there are going to be so many guys that are incredible people, have awesome character, but just don't know that there's a rule that you're supposed to ask on the first dating app text or do 3. Like that's a learnable etiquette skill that some people believe in and preach and some people don't even believe in. So if people get hurt and then build a lot of those rules, that's a big roadblock I've seen for dating after a breakup where it gets kind of stuck.
I'm so happy you brought this up because this links into exactly what my new group program is about. It's about being open to love, because so many people, specifically when they go through a really, heart-crushing breakup and then go back out to find love again, they think that they're available to love because they are on the dating apps or because they are, they have the desire to meet somebody. That's what they want. They say, okay, I'm ready to meet somebody. I'm at the age now where I want to have a partner and start a family. But then they have all these behaviors, exactly like you said, these rules, these things that they do that actually make them really unavailable. And the reason
Yeah.
is because they are emotionally blocking themselves. And it's not a blame game, because the reason they're emotionally blocked is because of everything that's happened in the past. It's all this emotional baggage and trauma that has happened because you've been in a bad relationship or you've been treated badly or broken up with, or all these things that have happened. We're not blaming people for all this armor that you put up, but at the same time, what happens is these behaviors that you're talking about, these are symptoms of a heart that is actually not open to love. So I think that what you said is so true, and something that I see a lot, so much so that my next group program is all about this topic of how you basically can become more available to love. And the piece in dating is that you have to be more open and understand that people are people, men, or even if, women, we're not robots. So we're not following this like perfect instruction manual for how to act. And I think it's such a shame that we don't give people chances more, and we don't really understand the humanness of people when it comes to dating. Because when it swings the other way, like you said, you end up, the people on the receiving end is like, hold on. It's happened to me before with a date. When I was single, I had this story. He actually was turned out to, not sure if it's a good example because the guy probably wasn't 100% all there, but I hadn't replied after the first date. Just in that evening, I'd gone home and he'd sent me a message like, it was really nice to have a nice night. Would like to see you again. And I'd fallen asleep, and it was midnight when he'd messaged me, and I had already gone to bed and had like a lazy morning. I don't think I even checked my phone in the morning. 11 a.m. I already had a message saying, how dare you not reply to my message? I thought the date went really well. I can't believe that you just ghosted me like that. And I'm like, hold down. It's not even been 12 hours. So obviously it can happen both ways. But when people have these very strict rules and expectations, we can often confuse that with standards. A lot of women probably, I'm sure people will push back and say, no, but I have high standards now. I've been burnt in the past. I'm now protecting myself. I think that these protections actually cause us to be alone for longer. Do you see the same thing?
100%. 100%. And the trickiest part about it is it's being reinforced from two places. One, like social media, I think that's where all these rules come from. Is there's a lot of people who have been hurt in the past, so they come up with these rules and then they sell it as you're being confident or you're being strong. You're being the prize. And then they tell you should do all these things. And these are like all the check boxes people should do if they really care about you. So then you start believing that and you go out into the world with your new checklist and rule book. And then you see that no one actually meets them. So you interpret that, not that the social media person's wrong, but that the world is horrible. Like the dating market is empty. There are no good men out there. There are no good women out there. Like nobody respects you. Nobody treats you the way you should be treated. When like really they're probably there the whole time. They're just getting weeded out by meaningless rules that actually don't really protect you from anything. Because like let's say that you have he's got to ask me out on after 2 texts. So it's got to be like he messages you, asks how you are, asks how many siblings you have, and then asks you on a date. And that's like it's got to be this amount of messages. Like there could totally be an incredible guy that messages you 2 times, goes on a date with a girl, really likes her, tries for like a week, doesn't work out, and then is ready for you. And then you could get married, have kids. Like that could be an amazing story, but you shut it down because you got this rule. And like, who cares? Like that rule is not protecting from anything whatsoever. So I think the remedy is you can pay attention to those things, but pay attention to many things at once. Like judge someone based on a holistic approach after a date where you can look at how they communicate over text. That's a data point. You can also look at how they show up in person. That's a data point. You can look at their values, all these things, and then put all those data points together and then make a decision as a whole. Do I like this person? Is this someone who I'm looking to be with? Instead of just judging them by one and missing the entire picture.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's a really good point, and it's why I talk a lot about dating for values and vision instead of just dating for these checklists. And these checklists include these arbitrary rules that just, they don't bring anything good. So if you're listening and you have a rule book in dating, then maybe it's time to question that rule book. One last question before we finish. I'd love to hear your take on talking about breakups with your new partner. So for anyone listening who's going through a breakup and then they're out there in the dating world, meeting new people, at what stage of new dating would you say would be a good time to speak about an ex or talk about a breakup? Because I find that quite often it's something that we never know how soon to bring it up. Should it be something that we bring up
Early.
on the first date, second date? You think early?
Yeah, probably second date. Like for me, the first date is about, do I want to go on a second date? So the first date's about fun. Like, do I enjoy being around this person? I don't think it says much about learning. It's just like, it's a more of a vibe check of, do I enjoy this person? Would I like to hang out with them for another hour? Second one and third one, that's when you start to like get to know things. So I think it's an amazing question to ask. Like, how did your last relationship end and what did you learn from it? Because that's an amazing way to tell if someone's ready to be there or not. And it's important you know how to answer it too, because people can tell if you're not ready to be there too. So usually, and you can also tell attachment styles pretty well from this question. So if you are talking to someone and they're talking about their last relationship, you're on second, third date or whenever it comes up, and they tell the story as if their ex is the main character. So they say like, yeah, like everything was going really well, and then she just like became extremely depressed and she would never listen to me anymore. I tried, but she would just ruin everything and everything became really sad and everything became really heavy and I just had to get out of there. Like the ex is the main person in that story. Like it's still all the energy is going towards her in the story. Whereas someone who's more moved on from it and talking about secure, they can still talk about things that happen, but they focus on the growth that they gained through the experience. So even I'll use a more drastic example. Like let's say she cheated on him. He can still make himself the main character. So it's like we dated for a while and there was some infidelity. Like she ended up sleeping with someone else and it really destroyed me for a while. And I had to rebuild my self-confidence. I had to find things that I liked. The relationship ended up ending, but I've learned a lot about who I am and what I'm looking for now. So there I'm the main character in there. It's
Yeah.
not emotionally charged. I'm coming at a place that it seems like I've processed the story. And the third way people tell that usually indicates avoidant attachment is they'll just downplay it or say it doesn't matter. Now, yeah, I've had some relationships, but like there's nothing. People will do this with marriages even. I've had a lot of people come in and they broke up with someone and they talk about right when they started dating them, like they were the person was married before and they just say like, it was nothing. It wasn't that deep of a relationship. Didn't really matter. Or they'll say their ex was crazy. And she was crazy. She had kind of off the wall. I had to get out of there. So
I
yes, I would talk about it early.
Yeah, I agree. I think the earlier the better for these big conversations. And obviously my audience is very, 30 plus, even if not 35 plus. And I'm a big advocate for talking about just being open about your past relationships, even if you've not had a serious relationship, to be able to speak about it. Because if that other person, you know, isn't open to even speaking about these things at the start, then it's a sign that they're not open in general to speaking about a lot of other emotional things as well. And 100% agree with this. It's a huge red flag. If somebody says that ex is crazy or puts blame and they're always the innocent party, it's like ding, 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 red flag. I would say that's one of the biggest red flags that you can have at the start of a relationship. I really like the way that you express the main character, as in make yourself the main character. And I actually wanted to ask you, sorry, I know I said it was the last question, but now is the last question. But no, I'm genuinely curious because it's a bit of a wild card question. You might not actually have come across this. So let's see. I have a few clients inside my turning community who've never been in a relationship before, and they're maybe 30 plus, and they've never actually had a serious relationship. And they always get so nervous when they go on a date that the man is going to ask, tell me about your past relationships, and they don't know what to say because they think that it's going to be perceived very badly that they've never had a serious relationship before. Do you have any thoughts about that? Have you ever come across anything like this before? And would you say it's true that people are put off if the other person has never been in a relationship before?
I think people are going to they're going to reflect back how you feel about yourself. So the best answer that you can give there is to tell the truth. That there's probably some reason why. Like if I were on a date with a girl and she's never been in a relationship before, but she comes to me and she says, I grew up really shy and I didn't know anyone would like me. And it was really hard. And like I there were probably some relationships I could have got in, but I sabotaged my way out of it because I didn't really think that people would enjoy having me as their girlfriend. But I've gotten past that. Like I really built a good relationship with myself and like I'm a little later than most, but I'm really happy to be here and I'm really excited and looking for a relationship now. That would sound awesome. Like I think that anyone would be happy to date you if that's your story. So the worst thing I think you can do is come up with some sort of excuse that's not true, like saying some reason you were busy that sounds impressive. People are going to see through that. Like, this is a place where you can be vulnerable, and it'll be a strength because it'll look like you're not afraid of who you are.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, especially about the energy that you give out. If you are afraid to say it and you are speaking in fear, then that's going to be reflected, and the other person's going to pick up on that energy and think, oh, this person really isn't happy with their life or really isn't happy with their relationship status. So yeah, that's very, very true. And at the end of the day, it's a lot about the truth of who you are as a person. So this is what we see a lot in the dating world with dating rules is do this, do this, do this. And then what, you're dating one person for like 3 months and all of a sudden the mask falls off. And then you're like, oh, you're actually really different to the person that I met. The person that I was falling for with all these, a lot in the dating world that I was familiar with when I was single was from the book Why Men Marry Bitches. I don't know if you know this book. It's like a very old, it's very old. Yeah, it's like a very old school, as if women basically need to be chaste. That's like the whole thing. It's very primitive, that women should be like completely lean back and then men will come to her. I disagree with it so much. Like, I think that actually whenever I hear or see advice on this, I'm kind of like, oh, I just hope people cover their eyes and ears because it's just not the truth. So yeah, like, I really think that you have to just be yourself, be authentic when you're showing up in the dating world, because at the end of the day, if this person is going to become your life partner and you're going to settle down together, whether that's have a family or not, this person's you're going to wake up next to them in bed every single day. They're going to see the real you. You can't just pretend to be somebody else for the rest of your life. So yeah, that's such a good point. Thank you so much, Cole. I've loved this conversation. I love talking about breakups. I think that it's just such a good topic to dive into. And lastly, can you just let the audience know where they can learn more about you, where they can find you on socials, and how they can order your new book?
So I'm on socials, just my name, Cole Zesiger. On Instagram, it's Coach Cole Zesiger. And then coachcolezesiger.com if you want to work together. I do one-on-one coaching and have some other coaches too. But the book is the biggest thing. It came out on February 10th. So whenever you're watching this, is probably pretty soon, but you can find it anywhere. So any bookstore, Amazon, but I'd love for you to read it. It's the book that I wish that I had during a breakup. That was my purpose in writing, is I felt like I was just picking from a ton of different books and learning. So I tried to put everything I learned from my heartbreak and the 2,000 people I've worked with and everything that I've read into this to just be the manual to help you get through it.
Amazing. I'm always looking for books to recommend my clients when they are going through a breakup. So this sounds like a really good practical one that I can recommend. So yes, thank you so much. And we'll see everybody on the podcast next week.